Hiya, so I just wanted to record a couple of videos for the retreat, and these are just like the basic practices that we're going to be doing, and we'll go through everything on the retreat. There'll be guided meditations, but just thought it'd be useful for people to come in with a sense of the practices that we're going to be doing, because I know that a lot of people, this is a new practice for them. So there's going to be two practices I'm going to talk through. I'll do two separate videos. The first one is very much the Imaginal practice, and then the other one is a more sort of like relaxed, open, kind of spacious awareness, spacious sense of being. And the purpose of having those two is that the Imaginal practice is a way of sort of going really deep, really connecting with what's happening, just opening things up, and then and that can get quite intense quite quickly. So I just wanted to offer an alternative practice so that if things are getting really intense in the practice and you just want to be able to like take your foot off the pedal a bit, there's a different style of practice that you can kind of rest in, recover, just like allow things to process, that sort of thing. So I'll start by talking about the Imaginal practice. And the most important thing to say about Imaginal practice is that it's very much your own practice. So you're connecting with your own inner world and allowing it to express itself through you. And everyone's experience is going to be different. And also everyone's approach and way of doing it and things that are going to work are going to be different. So part of this retreat is that it's almost like we're giving you a toolkit of different ways that you can connect to different parts of experience, and you can kind of pull them together and give them a try, and see what works for you. So just bear that in mind when you're listening to this video, but also our guidance in general. Be mindful that it's not coming from a place of like being directive. We're not kind of sitting here as teachers like telling you how to do things. It's more that we'll be in this video, I'm kind of offering up things that ways of connecting with your experience that you can then like feel into and see like, oh, how does that land for me? What does that evoke? What's my emotional response? How can I imagine practicing in that way? It's like very much a sense of a co-exploration, and trying to evoke that sense of sort of open curiosity in yourself, rather than do it this way kind of teaching. And one of the really important things with Imaginal practice, which is kind of vaguely related to that, is that you can't get it wrong. So I can't stress this enough, but there's no wrong way of doing Imaginal practice. It's like a space where anything is welcome, any expression. That's kind of like one of the fundamental ground rules of it. And in a way, Imaginal practice is kind of one of its purposes is dismantling these fixed ideas we have about right and wrong, getting things right, that sort of like inner critic vibe, all the tension we feel around those things. Imaginal practice is very much like opening that up, different aspects of it, allowing us to meet parts of ourselves that we'd normally reject as wrong or oppress. And a lot of it is about connecting with our experience in a different way. So I talk a bit about the kind of fight, flight and freeze responses that we get in us, and one of the things we're doing with Imaginal practice is essentially like rewiring that a little bit. So we have our sympathetic nervous system and we have our parasympathetic nervous system, and the two interact, but they are two distinct systems. And our sympathetic nervous system is when we're in that fight, flight, freeze. There's also fawn and flop, which is kind of when we're in danger, but when we use the parasympathetic nervous system a bit more. And what we're trying to do is, when we're in practice, we're kind of staying in that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that we're in when we're safe. So with all of these practices, I always encourage people to start by doing a really nice slow breath into the belly, so where the belly physically expands like this, and you can kind of feel your hands coming out, and then a nice long slow out breath through the nose. And a couple of those just like brings us into our bodies, and our bodies go, we're safe here. So I always start the practices with that, because then our bodies can relax. And then there's room for anything to express itself through us, through the Imaginal. And one of the most liberating aspects of the Imaginal, it's not all about this, but one of the most liberating aspects is that we can connect with parts of our experience that we normally only connect to when we're in that reactive state. And instead of becoming reactive and sort of dissociating, running away, or becoming angry at the world, wanting to like point out who's wrong, or where we just sort of like freeze up a bit, or where we go into that kind of nicey mode where we're like, oh, gotta make it better, be nice, and rather than just like kicking into that response system, we're being more creative and thinking like, okay, so here's an emotion that I find difficult, and normally it would trigger me in this way, but while I'm in this safe space, while I'm relaxed, meditating, I've got time, I've got space, what is this emotion actually saying to me? What does it want to express? Is it some sadness or grief that it's normally too painful, so there's not enough space to really connect with it, so rather than feel it, we get angry at the person? Or is it some really deep kind of like passion and excitement and caring about something where we really like believe in it, and we want to maybe we want to just like burn the whole system down because we're so frustrated with what it's like. And normally when we feel that sense of like real strong passion and care for things, it's not safe to express it, so we just sort of like put it away a bit, and are like, instead I'll be nice and kind and make everyone happy, rather than express that actually this matters and I really give a shit about this and I'm going to stand up for it. So basically Imaginal practice allows us to connect in with it, and one of the reasons it's important to do it in practice is because when we've been repressing stuff, things like grief or anger or anything, even positive emotions like joy and love and anything like that, anything that we've been repressing, when it comes out, it's like breaking down a dam. All the stuff that's been held back behind it will like flood us a bit. It will be kind of like overly, there'll be lots there and it won't always come out in the best way, and it's like breaking down a dam and the rivers are all a bit of a mess, so it's all just like blah everywhere, and that's not very productive when it's a part of us that we're already sensitive about because we repress it. If we get it out in our day-to-day life, then that's when it gets tangled up in other people's stuff, and it can like re-traumatize us basically getting out. Whereas when we're safe and in an imaginal sense, it's like no one's going to get hurt, nothing bad's going to happen. We can just kind of unpack these things and see what's there and connect with them. And it's like letting the flood happen when we're in a safe space, and then what happens after the flood is that we get are more just like natural, free flowing. So that part, rather than being repressed and somewhere where we don't go, it's actually just somewhere that we can touch into and allow things to flow through. But we're neither repressing it nor overwhelmed by it. We have a natural flow coming through us. So an example of this is that, having done a huge amount of imaginal practice with anger and oppression and violence in myself, I now have a very clear expression in myself of what matters. I'm very able to stand up for things I believe in, to speak cleanly, to be expressive, to express my sense of boundaries and care and passion for things without it becoming kind of tangled up in a way that is either me sort of like repressing it down or taking it out on other people. And so that's kind of some of the purpose of the practice, some of the biology behind the practice of what's happening inside our systems. And another purpose of the practice is just because it's fun, it's really nice, pleasant. So also, just to name it, things like enjoyable kind of erotic fantasy can be part of our imaginal practice. Also just fun journeying, seeing imagery, travelling through realms, connecting with the sensations in the energy body, playing with that. All of that is all very much welcome. It doesn't have to all be kind of serious or in some way transformative, or it can just be a sense of opening up this sense of play with our practice. And finally, one of the things it's really good for is just giving ourselves space to process things. So we're so busy and overwhelmed all the time. We have so much stuff going on that we don't actually give ourselves time to process very much. And the idea of meditation being a restful thing is possible and nice, but the idea that we can go from busy daytime life into calm stillness, those two things are just too far away. There needs to be a transition from busyness and lots of information, sensory overload, things I've got to do, people I've got to interact with, and then there's got to be a transition into calmness. And the idea, if you're just trying to switch from one up to the other, what's actually more likely happening is you're just dissociating and shutting everything down and creating more of that freeze response in us, where we just go, oh, none of this is welcome, shut it down. Whereas actually, if we go from that busy into into a space where we're okay, all this stuff is happening and I'm blah, however that presents for you is different for different people, and we go, okay, what needs to process, what needs to come out, what needs space, all that busyness, the thoughts need to sort of have somewhere to go, it needs to run itself out, and then when it's done that, then we settle into a place of more peace. But imaginal practice is very good at processing. So in the same way that if you're stuck in your thoughts, writing something down gets it out of you, it's kind of the imaginal practice is it's our body's natural way of doing that. It's our body's kind of telling stories and showing us imagery and bringing up emotions that will then sort of allow these things to do what they need to do in order for us to let them go. So that's a few reasons and things that why we practice this and what can come out. So one is to sort of reframe, to re-welcome parts of ourselves that we've shut down. Another one is just to have some fun and enjoy the process and see what comes up. And another one is to help us process stuff from our day, to help us kind of reconnect with experience and maybe settle into a state of sort of peace afterwards. And with that in mind, I'm going to talk through just the real basics of the practice. So the first step when we're doing imaginal practice is kind of getting a sense of our experience. So just like connecting in with the body, with the emotions, maybe with the heart space, with the mind, seeing how it's doing. Creating that space of like open curiosity and compassion, a sense of like being willing to feel the feels and just be present and connected to what's here. And then once we've kind of created that, there's almost a sense of like just kind of waiting for something to arise. And in terms of that will happen differently for different people. But some tips to help us do that is if we're keeping our sort of focus, our attention lower down in the body, so maybe in the heart space, or if you have a good connection with the energy body, like just feeling into that, allowing some jhanic energy to come through if that's accessible to you. It's generally more that sort of absorbed style of meditation that we're going for. We're kind of finding something and really like allowing ourselves to get lost in it almost. And there might even be a sensation with it of sort of like nodding off to sleep a little bit, or like spacing out, and it almost sort of it feels differently, but it can be a sense of like a sort of dark kind of held space that we're just sort of leaning back into or drifting out into or dropping into. Might be a sense of like losing which way's up or what's inside and outside. It's generally a kind of letting go of that more concrete way that we make sense of the world into a more sort of dreamlike space. And then from that place, it's very non-directive, so we're holding space for it, seeing what comes up, and if we're going in with this idea of kind of like meeting new parts of ourselves and welcoming them, there's a sense of really like following the thread, so going, I've heard the phrase going where the charge is, which is really nice. It's like finding the thing, it's almost like finding the deepest part of the most painful part, the bit that we're like most sort of like, do I want to go there? The kind of suffering, and really like connecting with that and being and almost like reframing it. So rather than somewhere where we would normally think is bad, some anger, some sadness, whatever it is, and going consciously thinking in this space it's all welcome, so let's go there, let's dive in and really allow it to express itself. It's a case of just like picking up that thread of something that feels sort of charged and alive and kind of difficult in a way, and really connecting with it and just like following the thread back. So it might be that you get to a place and it's like, oh, I feel this, and it's like, what's underneath that? And then you peel back another layer and you see, oh, what's underneath that, and peel back another layer. With a more sort of like playful attitude to it as well. It's very similar. You're kind of picking something that seems like interesting to you and just following the thread and allowing it, and following your curiosity and being like, okay, and what wants to happen now? What wants to happen now? Making sure that with both parts, it's making sure that there's a sense of openness. That's what we're really going for. We're when we feel ourselves like shutting down against anything, we're kind of just consciously coming back to that sense of safety, the sense of there's no such thing as it being bad or getting it wrong, and like relaxing that and allowing it to express. And one of the things that can really help with that allowing is a sense of what's being expressed, almost like letting go of the idea that it's about you at all. So it's kind of this wider system expression of the universe just sort of expressing itself through you. So a really good example of this is with anger. It's like, rather than getting stuck in a story of I'm angry at this person or this person's angry at me and it makes me feel sad, it's like there's just anger there and it really just wants to burn the whole world down. Or there's sadness and it just wants to cry and be sad. It's like letting go of this like fixed perspective that we have that that these things say something about us, and just opening up to them being a wider kind of like systemic expression of emotion and creativity through us and our practice. So that's just an overview of the practice and a little bit about the practice in terms of connecting with a part of us that we're welcoming back in, and also kind of a more open, explorative, fun practice. It's all really about kind of finding that thread, connecting with it and following it through. And like I say, we'll give you guidance that's based on that. So based on different aspects of, for example, connecting with the energy body and following that thread, or connecting with a sense of like archetypal resonance and following that. We'll be exploring different ways that we can connect with that in the retreat. And then I'm going to do another short video just on that sort of third type of practice, which is more about creating space for us to process in. So it's more sort of just like open awareness, space that's just kind of like allowing things through, where it's more relaxed, it's less sort of like diving in, foot on the pedal, really getting into experience, and more just like sitting back and allowing things through. So it can help with just making sure that it's not getting too intense on the retreat.